Please remember to keep your phones off and stay seated during our speaker. And tonight, please help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker, Angie.
Hi, I'm Angie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Angie.
And these aren't going to work up here. Sorry. Okay. You know, I didn't wear shoes all day today, even at the 2 jobs that I have, and I don't know why I wore them here. So anyways, that's not even the point. I'm Angie, and I have alcoholism, and I never know how to start these things. Hi, good to see you. Congratulations to everybody that picked up chips. Congratulations on one day. I am blessed to remember what it was like to have one day, and I'm really glad that you're here. I guess I'm going to start with talking about my alcoholism today. I have a daily reprieve that's contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And this morning I woke up and I had a head full of alcoholism, which is a head full of me. And I know that today my alcoholism has to do with selfishness and self-centeredness. I am all that I think about. And this morning I was revisiting a problem I had yesterday because I had to argue with this person in my head so that this person would see how right that I was. And that caused me to get really resentful this morning. So by 7:30 this morning, I am raging with resentment, and I'm just like fuming. And like the thing in the situation is, I wasn't mad that this person caused damage. I was mad that this person lied to me about the damage. And so it was like, in my head, it was like, I'm an easygoing person. I get along well with others. If I'm like that, you should act accordingly, and you should tell me the truth. And I have these expectations of the roles that people should play in my life. And so I'm fuming with resentment. And like when I get mad, you guys, I go from like 0 to 100. And typically I carry Real quick, yes. I carry baseball bats in my truck. And I have a history of taking it out on other people. But I know enough in this program to know that when I am disturbed, it has nothing to do with other people. And I have enough experience in this program to know that when I am upset, it has something to do with me, and that I need to pause and I have to take my own inventory. And sometimes that takes me a long time to get my focus off of what the other person did and to look within myself to see where I was at fault and how I can become amended. And so 7:30 this morning, I'm driving my kid to school. I'm really pausing, but like it's seeping out of my pores. I drop her off at school. I go to the square this morning because I think that I should run my anger off. So I'm running around the square and I'm taking myself through a 4-step. I'm calling my sponsor like I used to call people for outside issues. Sponsor's not answering the phone. So I'm taking myself through this inventory and I'm going back and forth in my head and blah, 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 blah. And then I have this sickening realization. And I swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about myself. And I sat down at the square. And by this point, I'm looking at my own behavior, right? Because it has nothing to do with the person I think that I'm mad at. It has to do with this thing that we talk about in this program, which is becoming amended. I made direct amends for a long time in this program as an unamended person. And so I'm sitting at the square, and now I'm adding to my 8th step. And I've got, I think that I'm mad at this person, but really I'm now writing an 8-step where I have done the things that I'm resenting about other people. And I'm adding something to my 8-step that I had forgotten. And then I'm adding another thing to my 8-step because my 4-step always brings me back to step 3, which is I made a decision based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt. Not the other person, me. And I remember when this person asked me for the thing that I resented, I said yes when my intuition told me no. And that is not the other person's fault. And so by 9 o'clock this morning, I'm adding to my 8th step. I'm writing out these note cards, putting it in my notepad on my phone so I can write it on my 8th step later. I'm walking into a 10th step, looking at the wrongs that I did and where I can take corrective action, and I'm now doing the internal work on myself. And like walking into an 11th step at probably about 9:30 this morning, asking God for inspiration, and then suddenly I'm flooded with dopamine and serotonin, and like what happened in that moment was not some like magical thing. It was like all that happened was I got released from the bondage of self by 10 o'clock this morning, you know? And I don't know if you guys have that experience, but like for me, practicing these principles in all my affairs has to do with my relationships with other people. It says in the 12 and 12 that alcoholism, the cause of alcoholism has to do with defective relationships. I literally have a relationship with everything in my life. I have a relationship with my cell phone. If you don't think you have a relationship with your cell phone, leave it at home and go out of town and see how you do. Most of you can't do that, right? I can't. No, not at all. I will detox if I leave my cell phone at home. That's another story. But anyways, so this thing about this program is like, it has to do with defective relationships. And when I think that I'm so right about something and I'm fuming with resentment, I cause serious harm to other people. And what I'm grateful for today is that this program has taught me that when I'm disturbed, I get to do this work on my insides, and I get to have a spiritual rearrangement today that releases me from my anger. And the crazy thing is, like, in the middle of this resentment, I'm running around the square, right? Trying to run the anger off. It's not working. And there's a bottle of beer sitting on the park bench. And I did a double take as I'm running. I'm like, whoa. And I remembered that I used to have to drink when I got resentful. I used to have to drown out the poison of resentment with alcohol just to have relief from my resentments. And like this program has taught me that it has very little to do with my problem with alcohol, and it has more to do with my relationship with self-reliance. You know, and I say this a lot, but it's like, these last like 3 years that I've been sober have been like the hardest years of my entire life. And like the message I want to carry tonight is that sobriety is amazing. Actually, it's not. Recovery is amazing. Recovery is amazing. When I'm actively working these principles in all my affairs, I will feel an effect that is very similar to how I felt when I drank alcohol. When I am not practicing principles in all my affairs, I get the effect that like I'm abstinent from alcohol and I'm basically doing prison time in this thing called life, you know, and I start to look at the world and resent it, thinking that it's just money-driven, money-hungry people and these fucking politicians and blah, 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 right? And that when I'm very untreated in this program, I will look at the world very differently than when I'm treated. And this will flip-flop back and forth based on the condition of my spiritual condition. And like for me, I realized that, you know, I spent a lot of time in doctor's offices. I got diagnosed with depression when I was 11 years old. They gave me medication. I was in and out of psychiatrist offices. And I would take these tests. And I remember like at one point, like, with my alcoholism, I would lie on the test to try to get the specific type of medication. So I'm getting diagnosed with things that I don't have just so that I'll get good meds for it. But like, the point of this is like, I spent a long time thinking that I was mentally ill when really what I had was a spiritual disease. And I was trying to medicate a spiritual problem with like a, what's the word? Like a medical pill, you know? And like what I realized is that I didn't have like depression, like a clinical depression. What I had was spiritual depression. And when I took certain actions in this program, the depression went away. So that's my alcoholism today. That's the 12 steps for me today. My backstory is quite similar to other people's stories. You know, I started when I was 14 drinking alcohol. I remember the alcohol going down cold and then warming up my stomach. I don't know how that happens, but it was like my insides lit up like a Christmas tree when I drank alcohol. By 16, 17 years old, I'm getting drunk on the weekends and I'm waking up places and I can't remember how I got there. I remember my phone battery being at 2% and I'm calling people like, please pick me up. I'm on the corner of bumblefuck Egypt and I don't know, and come get me. And so I would have my friends come pick me up and I'd be like, I can't do that again. That was really scary. And I would do it again the next weekend. By 19 years old, I'm living on my own. And I'm going from house to house, place to place, and I have to drink just to get out of bed in the morning. And I remember I would carry around a water bottle and it'd be full of vodka, and I would drink it on the bus as I'm going from place to place with my purposeless life. And I always had something to blame for my alcoholism. And fast forward, I got sober when I was 22. I got sober for 4 years. I was in AA here in this town. It was one of the most wonderful times that I've had, and I was not an amended person in this program. And I picked up another drink because I thought I got what normal people get back in their life. And so I had a really cool job. I had all the bells and whistles that life will give you and sobriety will give you. And there was a lot of perks to what I was doing. And I thought because I had what normal people have in their life that I was normal again. And the delusion that I could drink like a normal person came into my head, and I started drinking again. And I came in and out of meetings picking up 30-day chips, saying I couldn't do that again, I'm not going to do that again, and then I would keep doing it again. Then I left this town and I left everything I owned, including my big books, in a storage locker. And I left because I didn't need them anymore. And then 3 years later, I ended up back here, more beaten and broken than I've ever had been before. And I remember sitting in those chairs with a day or two of sobriety, fighting for my life. And I remember not being able to stay sober. I remember going to meetings under the influence. I can't stop drinking, and I kept going to meetings thinking that would get me sober. And I would go to the meetings, and I would show up to the meetings, and I would go home, and I couldn't stop drinking, and it was suggested to me that I might need to go to a place to dry out. So I would go to detox, I would dry out for 5 to 7 days, I would come home, and I couldn't stop drinking. And so what ended up happening is I ended up going to a 30-day program. It was my 15th treatment center, and when I got back, I was living at my parents' house at almost 30 years old. My daughter was about to turn 2. I was beaten down by my alcoholism, and the first time in my life, I could see the fear on everyone's face that I was around. And I was at my mom's house, and I had just gotten back from this 30-day treatment program, and my mom was frantic in the house. She's like, okay, get your stuff, we're gonna get dressed, we're gonna go do this thing, we gotta go to the grocery store, we gotta get all this stuff in the grocery, and then we're gonna come home and we're gonna unpack all the groceries, and she had the whole night planned out. And I used to get so mad at my mom for doing stuff like that, don't tell me what to do, I'm not a child anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting on the couch watching my mom and just seeing how scared she was, because I could see that inside my mom, she was waiting for me to take another drink. And my mom was scared to death of my alcoholism. I remember when they sat me down on the couch, and I'm lit, right? I've got the cure inside of me, this liquid courage. And my parents, I remember my mom's voice trembling, and she goes, I don't care if you get sober, but you're not going to be a parent to this kid anymore. And I remember my mom being terrified to tell me that. And I'd spent my entire life looking at life through my own perception, through my own selfishness and self-centeredness. And for the first time, I'm starting to see from other people's perspective what my alcoholism is doing to them. And I remember those first couple weeks of sobriety, just crying my eyes out, thinking what have I done to people? And that's what I call defective relationships. My alcoholism doesn't just ruin my life, it ruins everyone else's life around me. It stole my mom's sleep. It stole my mom's spirit, because my mom grew up with a conception of a higher power that was going to love people and take care of them. And what my alcoholism did to my mom was it robbed her of that conception. She stopped having faith in a God because her daughter couldn't stay sober. And she didn't understand what was wrong with me, and she couldn't fix me anymore. She couldn't love me through it anymore. And I remember the rage in my dad, and I remember like I couldn't even walk in the house without everyone it felt like everyone was on eggshells, right? And I was doing that to them as a result of my alcoholism. I had told them a million times, I'm never going to do this again. And the fact of the matter is when I had that first step experience, and I was laying in that detox for the third time in like 2 months, I had tears streaming down my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I got brutally honest with myself, and I said, I know I'm going to do this again. And that was my first step moment, was when the delusion got beaten out of me enough to know that I will drink alcohol again, because that's the condition of alcoholism, you know? And like the big book says, we drink for one reason and one reason only. And it talks about resentment, and it talks about resentment fueling our insanity. And so when we get insane in this program, we don't have a choice whether we drink again. I learned that my first step is really about having one voice and no choice. I have the voice of my alcoholism, and that's what I woke up with this morning. It came to me this morning with a judgment against another person, and I believed it. That's how delusion works. It's when the voice of my alcoholism tells me a lie and I buy into it. And for me, it requires an action in this program for me to get out of the management of that voice and to seek another guidance system. And I didn't do that this morning. It took me till about 10 o'clock this morning to seek another voice. Low spiritual insulin. So anyways, I was talking about my family, defective relationships. I don't remember where I was going, so I guess we'll go somewhere else with it. I do this often. I'll start telling a story and then I'll completely forget where I was going with it. It's like almost embarrassing for me, but I do it all the time now, so I guess it's not that embarrassing. So we're just gonna change the subject, I guess. So I'm living at my parents' house, right? And everyone's walking around on eggshells around me. I'm starting to take responsibility for the fact that it's just chaos everywhere I go. And I make a phone call to a guy. He starts sponsoring me over the phone. He starts carrying a message of depth and weight to me. When this guy talks about alcoholism, I 100% know exactly what he's saying. And it started to scare the crap out of me that I had a condition of alcoholism. And the way that this guy described it, I couldn't deny it anymore. I felt like a prisoner to my alcoholism. And so we went through the steps. I had a sudden and profound spiritual awakening on a 4-step inventory to a God that I resented. And I had a significant rearrangement inside of me. I can barely describe it to other people. Some people have had it and know what I'm talking about. And after that moment, I started practicing the 6 and 7 work, which is practicing being amended in this program. I started writing out my 8th step, and I'll just share with you one of my resentments. So the resentment inventory, so we do this resentment inventory, and for me, we do it on the jaywalker.com. Do you guys know what that is? The 7 areas of self packet or whatever? Okay. So the 7 areas of self, it's about putting my alcoholism on paper. What I really needed to surrender was not to alcohol, right? Because I'm already abstinent from alcohol. What I really needed to surrender was the poison of my judgment and opinions about other people. And so one of my resentment inventories, and I've shared this before, but it's been probably about a year since I've shared it, is I had a serious resentment towards ex-boyfriends. These guys were toxic, man. I just couldn't stand the guys that I dated. They were horrible to me. You guys don't understand. And my resentment inventory is how you guys owe me an amends for your behavior. So when I'm writing down the inventory, I'm writing down how wrong you guys were. And my sponsor was really good about fueling my resentments, just really making me be honest about it. So I would write down this inventory and be like, okay, this is all the reasons why this guy is such a horrible guy. And then you write the adjective next to it, like what your alcoholism would use to describe this person, and it's usually pussy. Wait for the plot twist. It's not going to be funny in a minute. And then And then the resentments are my judgments about how you're not playing your role right. So the role is boyfriend, right? And then the resentments are, you did this, you said this, you didn't do this, you didn't say this. It's really simple. And I'm fueled with it, right? The poison is seeping out of me, and I'm writing this against boyfriends and my parents and every boss I've ever had, even though I've been fired from 25 jobs. All my bosses were wrong. And then you get down to 7 areas of self, and it asks, how does this affect your self-esteem? Well, self-esteem starts off with I am. I am the greatest girlfriend that this guy has ever had. I mean, why would he treat me like that? And then pride says, others should see that I'm the greatest girlfriend that this guy's ever had. And then you go into ambition, and it says your selfish want as a result of this resentment. I want all of this guy's time and attention. In fact, every minute of it should have been given to me. How dare him share it with other people? Yeah, she's shaking her head. That's awesome. And then security. Security, as I need all this guy's time and attention in order to be okay. And then you get down to personal relationships, and it says real boyfriends should. Real boyfriends should do what I tell them to do when I tell them to do it. Some of you guys might relate to this. So that, and my sponsor goes, that's not a relationship, that's imprisonment. And that's when I realized I was taking hostages in Alcoholics Anonymous. And some of you guys know what that's like, man. Like, I know some of you, if you're like me, some of you show up to these meetings for the guy or girl you're going to talk to when you leave here. And so it's like, so personal relationships, and then sex relations is a real woman would. And then this is where we get to define our alcoholism's character. And for me, when I'm really in my alcoholism, I'm like Angelina Jolie when she's that badass, like nobody messes with her. That's my alcoholism. And it talks about this in step 3, where it says the roles in which we play God. And what my inventory did was that it taught me that I assign other people a role based on a role that I'm playing, but my roles are always changing. So my expectations of you change based on how I'm feeling today, and nobody can ever play their role right. So then we get down to the realization, right? And I'm just mad. And like, this is every boyfriend I've ever had. The same resentment is to every single guy that I've ever dated. And I have a history of dating guys that die of drug overdoses, And it's like, I remember being 2 years sober and my best friend walking in my bedroom and saying, your boyfriend just died last night. He got drunk on a Sunday and died on a Monday, 6 days later. And I remember the pain of like having to go through that with my boyfriends. And so we get down to the realization, I've got my poison on the paper. I'm convinced my sponsor's bought into this. I'm convinced my sponsor agrees with me. And then we get down to the realization, and my sponsor goes, what was it like for him to date you? What, did you not just hear me? Are you joking me? And it's like, okay, so now I'm thinking, and I'm like, what was it like for him to date me? I don't know. It was, oh, God. Oh, wait, hold on a sec. And now I'm going through it in my head, and I'm looking at the story just a little bit different. And, like, this is the thing is, it's like, when you're about to hit a curb in your car, like you're like watching your phone. I know you guys text and drive sometimes. We all do it. But, like, when you're about to hit and you like look up and you're like, oh, and when your heart hits you, you're like, oh my God. And like it's like jolts you awake, and all you have to do is turn that wheel 1 degree just to miss the curve. And that's kind of what my inventory was. It was just like, you just flip-flop that perspective by 1 degree and you start seeing stuff a lot different. And all the stories that my head has been telling me my entire life started to be wrong. And it was like, the big book doesn't say we look at my part. The big book says we take out their wrongs entirely. We don't look at their wrongs, and we see where we had been at fault. And I realized that the way that I treated those guys that I was dating was like I treated them like they were prison inmates in my house. And I was absolutely disgusted at the relationships that I had with men, because I wasn't treating them like a relationship. It was my way or the highway in my house. And I treated them like they were the dirt on the bottom of my shoe. And I might be over dramatizing that, but it's like I was absolutely disgusted when I saw how I treated people in my relationships. And the 4-step for me was about having a new perspective on my life. And when I went back, because like, here's the deal, like we're all in here because we want to stay sober today, right? And then you do that inventory, and it's like, not at no point do I write anything about alcohol in my inventory. So what's the real problem? Exactly. This thing in my head called self, which has been telling me what to do since I've been a little girl, you know? It's been managing my life since I was a little kid. And like some of you guys know, like I'm defiant. I like testing the boundaries. I like seeing how far I can push people, you know? And it's like this defiance I had. I grew up with a police officer as a father. We didn't get along, you know? And it's like I was defiant towards my cop dad. I was defiant towards the people in high school. I was defiant towards judges and cops and like all of these things. And it's like at no point did I ever defy the voice of my alcoholism. I was being defiant in the wrong way. I wasn't using that against my own alcoholism. The voice in my head told me to do something and I was a slave to it. Yep, I'll do that, I'll steal that, I'll lie about this, I'll be afraid about that. You want me to be scared today? I'm scared today. It's gonna ruin my whole day now. It's like I've never challenged the voice inside my head. And in Bill's story, it's such an amazing story. He had a resentment to God. And in his story, he says, after he had this profound spiritual awakening, he said that his work was to test his thinking with the new God consciousness within. And I was opened up to a God consciousness as a result of this new perspective that I had in my inventory. And then when I started to open up about these realizations and say, you want to know what? This is how I treated them. That became my 5th step. And I started getting honest with other people about how I treated other people. And I remember like, I would sit there and I would blab on and on about a 5th step, and my sponsor said, is there anything else? And my eyes would shift. I don't know if some sponsors have seen this with their sponsees. My eyes would literally shift because I'd be thinking about something that came up when he asked me that question. And then he goes, ooh, there it is. And I'm like, how does this guy know? Like, he can see into my soul, you know? And it was like, I was trying to hold on to the worst facts about myself. There were some things that I wanted to take to the grave with me because I didn't want you guys to know how sick I was. And the reason why we come to Alcoholics Anonymous is because we're sick people. And in the inventory it says, you know, when I have this new perspective, I can now look at the world as like sick people. And not like sick in the sense of like, look at me on my spiritual high horse, better than all of you guys, and you're all sick people. No, it says like, I'm going to look at you guys as sick people who are also doing things based on the voice inside of your head, and we are equal. We all do that. And then this rage that I have towards other people started to diminish. And then you get to practice this work of testing my thinking with the new God consciousness, which is when I am disturbed, I get to test that with the new perspective that I have in the 4-step. And like, here's the thing, that's all in a chapter called How the Program Works. That's not even the program. A lot of people do 4-step inventory, they have really cool realizations, and then they leave with it. They're like, thank you, AA, that's enough. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go now. The real work is when you have that new perspective, you practice this thing called trust. Because like for me, the bridge between 3rd column and 4th column in the inventory is something called I am responsible. And it's when you walk over the bridge and it's like, you have taken responsibility for your resentments in the role that you've assigned people, in the role and how I'm playing God. And then you walk into the rest of the steps, and it's like the 6 and 7 work is like, I didn't walk in here and like suddenly I was just an honest, law-abiding citizen. Practicing 6 and 7 was like when I show up at a grocery store and I want to park in the handicap spot and take Granny's spot, I gotta go find me another spot, you know, like that's me practicing a 6 and 7 step because I have a voice in my head that's entitled and thinks that I should, as a single mother, be able to park in handicap, you know. This takes practice, you know. It says progress, not perfection. I wish it said practice, not perfection, because that seems to be more accurate for me. But the 6 and 7 work is like something that I get to do every single day. And I get to practice being this new person, this new role that God assigned me, this power that I had found in the steps. And like, I gotta be honest, like if I would have came in here and borrowed your guys' idea of God, I probably wouldn't have made it because I was resentful at that God. But I've come to know the power to be a second voice, a secondary guidance system that's greater than the voice of my alcoholism. So now when the voice tells me to lie about something, I get to challenge that. I get to bring another person into that challenge and say, hey, what did you hear? Is this in alignment with like the work that we're doing here? And I get to take an action based on that secondary voice, meaning I'm going to start challenging it. And then writing out the A step is like, I remember writing out this whole A step because I could really see what it was like for like my bosses to have to be my boss. And I could really see what it was like for those boyfriends to have to be my boyfriends. And I started, I was so ready. I was like, I'm willing to go any lengths. I'm unafraid at this point because I got this new power flowing through me. I remember making amends when I was sober last time. And like, I stole money from a job that I loved while I was sober. I did that stuff sober. And like, I remember going to my boss and sitting down with him and like trembling with fear. And like telling this guy, like, I've been stealing from you at this job that I love, and here's the money, I'm going to pay you back for it. And I wasn't doing a 9-step. I was doing a 5th step. I was trying to buy my own peace at the expense of others because I was going home, and this secret that I had, I was getting paranoid at work. That's what was happening because receipts were coming through the office, and I was just waiting for one to hit my desk. And I was getting paranoid, and I thought I had to tell on myself in order to not get in trouble. And there was like a little bit of cool stuff that came out of it. They wanted me to do security for this job and help them like find other people that were stealing from them. But like, I wasn't done stealing at that time. Like, I was like 23, 24 years old, and like, I would still go steal from Walmart, and I'm telling this guy I'm not going to steal anymore while I'm still stealing. That's not being amended. Making direct amends means that I am amended in what I'm making direct amends for. And I think sometimes, like I didn't know the concept of like the 6 and 7 work that preceded making direct amends. And so I remember writing out this amends list, and I go to my sponsor. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make amends to my ex-boyfriends and my mom and like all these people. And my sponsor goes, how are you going to make amends to your mom? You're still living at her house, It was like, that's a really good point. So the next amended action was for me to grow up and get my own place. And so it was like, okay, now go get your own apartment, show that you can be financially stable, show that you can take care of your family. And I think I made amends to my mom around a year of sobriety, and I hated this woman my entire life. And really it was like, I hated my mom for the work my dad didn't do, because he took off when I was really young. And I think I put a lot of pressure on my mom to be a better mom, doing a single mom job. And so I hated this woman. I hated everything about her condescending attitude and like the way that she treated me, and like, and when I sat down to make amends to her, I was in a place of being amended with my mom. And when I sat down with her, my mom said, "You're my favorite child, and I hated you." And she told me about this hate that she had watching me in my alcohol addiction with my daughter on my lap. And then my mom started telling me her story, and she started telling me things about like how she had to leave her home when she was 16 years old because of the abuse that was happening there, and how she moved in with her aunt and got raped by the other son there. And then she started telling me about how she would meet guys so that she could have a place to live because she essentially had nowhere to go. And then she got pregnant by my dad as a result. And like, I remember listening to my mom's story, and like at no point did I ever ask people for their stories. At no point in my life, and I'm almost 30 years old, did I care enough to think about anyone but myself. And my mom's telling me these stories, and I realize that I'm now 30 years old and I know nothing about my mother. Absolutely nothing. And I've lived with this woman most of my life. And like it started to get real weird after that, because I started to date my family. And I know that sounds weird, but it was like, I remember taking my grandpa out to lunch. I was like, I don't know anything about my family. And I just took my grandpa out to lunch. And now I'm asking him a bunch of questions about his life and where he went to high school and like all the things he enjoys doing. And they think I'm just blasting them with questions. But like I'm now in a position where I'm like, I need to get to know my family. I don't know anything about them. And so my 9-step work has really, it's a long period of reconstruction. I'm telling you, I feel like I'm drowning in financial amends. And like, you know, I get to see what it was like for my mom, because I'm a single mom right now. And, you know, I work a lot of hours. I'm in recovery. And so I have like my meetings and all the things that I do. And, you know, it's like, where was I going with that? I have no idea. I really get to see what it's like for my mom. And yeah, I don't know. I was going somewhere with that. I can never remember. It was going to be something good, though. It always is. That's okay. And so then I started making amends and, drowning in financial amends. Like I take out these note cards, right? And I'm like, I owe this person $3,000. You know, and that's not even the whole bank. I owe this one person $3,000, and for me, like, I'll set up these payment arrangements with people, and I'll send them $50 every Friday until that amends gets paid off. And like right now, I'm about to tie up one. This one's for $725, and so I'm coming to the end of paying this person every Friday, and now I started up the next payment arrangement, and I call someone else on my amends list, and I say, hey, can I send you this amount of money every Friday? And that's what I do with my money. And I remember hearing this guy speak at I go to like a lot of the recovery events, so I'll go camping with people and I'll go to conferences and stuff like that. And I remember this guy saying, I had such a resentment towards working. Really didn't feel like I should work, but I should be paid to not work, you know. This program, like seriously, this program's about growing up for me. Like I have a lot of immature ideas about the way that we're supposed to live life. And this being in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous has really taught me how to grow up here. And like, you know, as a kid, you're dependent on other people to take care of you financially. And at 30 years old, I still have to outgrow that idea. You know, I remember saying to people like, oh, I'm grown. I had to grow up at a young age because I grew up in a dysfunctional alcoholic home and blah, blah, blah. I never grew up, you guys. I just thought that I did. But I would, you know, like I have to pay these people back. And this guy then spoke at this conference. He goes, you know, I go to work in the morning and I have my second job just so I can pay off those financial amends. And I was like, just hearing the willingness at a meeting from somebody else, it like lit this fire inside of me that like, yes, I can do it. Is it going to be hard? Yeah, it's going to be hard. But you want to know what? The price that the gift that we get is like, I'm carrying around like this bag of rocks with me called like my amends. And every time I pay somebody back, I'm not given a gift for it. I'm giving away the load that I've been carrying around with me, which is the shame and the guilt and the criticism I have against myself for what a piece of garbage I've been my entire life. And like, I didn't like receive like, come in. We don't take attendance here. But like I don't have like I'm not like gifted anything as a result of this program, but what it is it's subtracting from me which no longer serves me. Every time I make an amends, I'm lessening the load that's on my shoulders. And I remember this old timer calling me chaotic. I just took it so personally. I was so mad about it. But the truth is like I'm very chaotic. I'm like all in or I'm all out. And like I'm either up or I'm completely down and I'm all over the place. And like I got to do a 10-step around that and really see like if you're like consistent in this program, your life becomes consistent and so do you as a person. And I got to look at how inconsistent I am with the people around me, and like 2 minutes, dang it, okay. see how inconsistent I've been and start practicing consistency. And this year of my sobriety has really been about like a consistent number of meetings, a consistent practice with my 12-step program. That means I do my 12-step program today. I don't wait for big things to happen. I don't wait for the fear of drinking again before I do this program. I do it in all my affairs, and the result is sanity. And I thought it was sobriety, and it truly is sanity. And so thank you for letting me share. I'll pass it that.